Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. We are here on Monday because I'm on the road today to see a pretty big one, Superman. I want to make sure I see it as early as I can and get you a review as soon as I can. So we are going to go with the dreaded estimates today, but there was really no question about what movie dominated this July 4th weekend. It was Jurassic World Rebirth, and let's look at the Friday through Sunday numbers. Now, this does not include Jurassic World's Wednesday and Thursday gross, but it was an easy winner over the holiday weekend with a $91.5 million three-day number and a $147.3 million total since it opened on Wednesday. We're going to look at how that compares to the other movies in the franchise in just a few minutes. F1, the movie, had a respectable drop in week number 2, 54%, maybe a little bit steeper than a lot of people might have wanted. At $26 million, it's now over the $100 million domestic mark. How to Train Your Dragon brought in another $11 million in its fourth weekend of release. It's nearing $225 million. LEO dropped 45% for a $5.7 million week number 3. It's now at $55 million domestically. I don't think that's going to be enough to save it. 28 years later, drops another 53% with $4.6 million, but it stayed in the top 5. It's now at over $60 million domestic. In what's being estimated as a tie for 6th place, I'm sure this will be settled once final numbers come in tomorrow, Lilo and Stitch comes in at $3.8 million, and Megan 2.0 drops a hefty 63% after a very unimpressive debut to come in at a matching $3.8 million. That's no big deal for Lilo and Stitch, but it is a big deal for Megan 2.0, which continues to be disappointing at the box office. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning comes in not too far behind Megan 2.0 with $2.7 million. It's trying to get to that $200 million ceiling that we've seen for most of the Mission Impossible franchise. They tend to settle in just under or just over $200 million. Materialist spends another week in the top 10. It brought in $1.3 million. And rounding out the top 10 is the 41st anniversary re-release of This Is Spinal Tap, which hit theaters on Saturday night. It brought in an estimated $931,000. Dropping out of the top 10 this past weekend, we have Karate Kid Legends out after 5 weeks, and From the World of John Wick, Ballerina out after 4 weeks. And when we look at the biggest theater count changes for this past weekend, Materialist lost a little less than half of its remaining theaters, 904 of them. It's still barely in wide release with 1,027 left. From the World of John Wick, Ballerina lost over half of its theaters, 923. It's now out of wide release in 873 theaters. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning lost a chunk of theaters, 612 of them. It's still in just over 1,500. 28 years later, it started shedding theaters. It lost 527. It's still in 2,917. And Karate Kid Legends loses over half of its remaining theaters. It lost 522. It's still in 403. This is what I like to call our road to recovery. The blue line is the box office weekend average for 2015 to 2019. The red line is the average from 2021 to 2024. And the dotted black line is every weekend this year. And you can see that even with the strong debut of Jurassic World Rebirth, we were still just barely over where we have been the last few years. That just goes to show that there wasn't a whole lot of support on the back end of that ticket behind Jurassic World, and well below where we were in the years prior to the pandemic. We'll see if Superman can help turn this trend around. So let's talk a little bit about Jurassic World Rebirth, and there's a few things that I want to address. First of all, let's see where it falls as far as the biggest opening weekends of 2025 so far. And as far as 3-day openings go, despite the fact that it opened on Wednesday, it was still the third best opening of the year behind Lilo and Stitch and a Minecraft movie. Captain America: Brave New World is in 4th, with How to Train Your Dragon in 5th. And Jurassic World Rebirth is the only movie thus far on this list that was a Wednesday opener, so still able to pull in impressive numbers Friday through Sunday, especially considering that as far as audience reaction goes, at least on opening night, it was one of the lowest rated Jurassic films. These are the cinema scores for the Jurassic Park/World franchise so far. The original got an A cinema score, The Lost World got a B+, Jurassic Park 3 got a B-, Jurassic World rebounded with an A, then Fallen Kingdom and Dominion both got an A-, and Jurassic World Rebirth on opening night received a B from those audiences, which is the second lowest score for the franchise in cinema score history. I guess there is some irony to the fact that this was the only Jurassic World movie so far that I found somewhat tolerable. I didn't love it by any means, and yet it was the least favorite according to CinemaScore. Now, a lot of people always ask how CinemaScore works. It's really a judgment of expectations. The audience walking in, what did they expect? Did they get what they expect? and what is their reaction to it. And the real thing that we've often seen this affect is the legs of a movie, how well it does past its opening weekend. Of course, we're not going to know that until we get another 2 or 3 weeks down the road, but Jurassic World Rebirth has a lot of competition in the month of July, and if the word of mouth matches what we've seen on CinemaScore, then we could see a fairly sharp decline, even though it was, as I said, a pretty strong opening weekend. Let's take a look at where Jurassic World Rebirth stacks up when it comes to the franchise overall. This is the Jurassic World franchise by opening weekend, Friday through Sunday, and Jurassic World Rebirth comes in 4th on that list, well behind Jurassic World Dominion, but that movie opened on Friday and not on Wednesday, so I guess it's really no surprise that Jurassic World Rebirth comes in lower, but Jurassic World Dominion brought in basically as much as Jurassic World Rebirth in 3 days, as opposed to 5 days. Jurassic World Rebirth comes in ahead of the openings of The Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, which was also a Wednesday opener, and the original Jurassic Park. When you adjust those numbers for inflation, Jurassic World remains at the top at $283.2 million, followed by Fallen Kingdom and Dominion. Then The Lost World gets bumped up to 4th with a $144.4 million opening adjusted for inflation, followed by the original Jurassic Park, which brought in $111.5 million, and then you see Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World Rebirth basically neck and neck. If Rebirth comes in a little bit ahead of estimates, then those two grosses will be even closer. But what we are seeing here, as far as the Friday through Sunday numbers adjusted for inflation, is that Rebirth is performing basically how we saw Jurassic Park 3 perform back in 2001, and that was definitely not the franchise's high point. But as I mentioned earlier, Jurassic World Rebirth was a Wednesday opener, which means it's been open for 5 days. So let's see how it stacks up against the franchise when you look at 5-day grosses. And you can see that it's slotted in the same place when you look at grosses through 5 days behind the other 3 Jurassic World films, although there is a bigger gulf between Rebirth and Dominion. Jurassic World Rebirth is about $25 million behind where Dominion was at the same point. The Lost World Jurassic Park made $81.3 million through 5 days, followed by Jurassic Park 3 and the original. However, when you adjust those numbers for inflation, we see a pattern repeating. Jurassic World Rebirth and Jurassic Park 3 are again performing almost exactly the same. They both trail the original Jurassic Park by a couple $1 million. Of course, in 1993, the release structure was completely different. It was actually quite a bit different in 2001. Jurassic World Dominion's in 4th, followed by The Lost World, which brought in an adjusted total of nearly $200 million through 5 days. Then Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and 2015's Jurassic World, which brought in $350.5 million. And it probably shouldn't come as any surprise that when I'm not doing this show, I'm still looking at box office stuff. I'm reading the industry news. I'm looking at forums online to see what people are saying or comparing my thoughts to other people's thoughts. And I was a little surprised in a forum over on Reddit, which is devoted to box office. Somebody had linked one of the stories about Jurassic World Rebirth's box office performance, and one of the very top comments was about how dumb I was for projecting that Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning was going to outgross Jurassic World Rebirth at the summer box office. And that is very much true. When you look at my 2025 box office predictions, I did predict that Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning would be number 5, and I did predict that Jurassic World Rebirth would be number 6. But in defense of myself, I will say the reason why I picked Mission Impossible above Jurassic World Rebirth is that I thought that there would be more enthusiasm for this movie than there was for the last one, and there was, just not as much as I thought. And the reason why I picked Jurassic World Rebirth lower is because I thought I saw signs of waning audience enthusiasm for that franchise, and that's what we're seeing. It's already tracking well behind Jurassic World Dominion. This is not a movie that's going to exceed the gross of the previous film unless something changes drastically. So the underlying principles behind why I predicted what I did are there, just not to the degree that I predicted them. And, you know, I don't ever say that I am the ultimate box office expert. I do these picks for fun because it's something cool to track throughout the summer during the box office season, but I always get one or two things drastically wrong. I would say that, yes, I did underestimate Jurassic World Rebirth a bit, and I did overestimate Mission Impossible, as I think I probably overestimated How to Train Your Dragon. You just just don't know what these movies are going to do when you're trying to predict it 6, 7, 8 weeks out or more. But I do feel that I was able to sense the underlying trends behind both of those films, and I'm curious to see where they do end up at the summer box office, especially with the word of mouth on Jurassic World Rebirth. What are the legs going to look like, and what is Universal going to do with this franchise going forward? I don't think that it was very smart for them to rush this movie into production, but one thing that they did do that was smart was to budget this film responsibly for a movie of its size. This was not a movie that had a $300 million budget, so I think that this is probably going to be a profitable film, perhaps even in the theatrical window. And then the question becomes, well, what are they going to do next? That's the tough thing when you're looking at franchise films and deciding what to do next. You never quite know when the bottom is actually going to fall out. Transformers kept going too long. I would argue that Fast and Furious has been going too long. Will Universal try to reinvent? Will they try to do more of what they've been doing? No matter what they do, I do still think that they are up against the clock, because even if this latest Jurassic World movie is profitable, or even what you might call a hit, which I think is possible, the signs are still there that audience enthusiasm is waning, and you don't want to still be playing musical chairs when there aren't any places left to sit down. And I thought this was a great place to turn to our members here on the channel. Our member poll question for this week is, what would you like the Jurassic franchise to do going forward? This is a traditional poll, and the 4 options that I've given you are: continue the Jurassic World series from where it is, restart the Jurassic Park series, however you decide to define that, whether it's a new story within the existing frame or rebooting it somehow, start a completely new series, so basically a new Jurassic iteration, neither world nor park, or just stop making Jurassic movies altogether. If you're a member here on the channel, you can vote in this poll right now. Depending on how you're watching, there might be a button for you to push to become a member, or there's definitely a link down in the description below. I'd love to have you be a member here, because not only do you get to vote in the poll every week, you also get videos like this one early, as well as custom badges and emoji for the chat. It's really fun, and I like to hear what you say each and every week. And last week, the member poll question that I asked was, what July release are you most looking forward to? And we had 2 clear winners. Superman was an easy number 1 with 71 votes, followed by the Fantastic Four, First Steps, with an appropriate 40 votes. Then we had a big drop off to Eddington, which had 9 votes. Jurassic World Rebirth, the poll was conducted before the movie opened, with 7 votes. And then literally the 5th place winner was someone who said their most anticipated movie was getting their Sinners 4K UHD Steelbook in the mail. Although it was tied with another movie that's not on the poll, which is a viewer from the UK who said he was looking forward to seeing The Girl Who Leapt Through Time when it was released in his local theater. So not great news if you're rooting for I Know What You Did Last Summer, or Smurfs, or Happy Gilmore 2, because they received little to no support in that poll. We'll see what the results of this week's poll are next week. So Jurassic World Rebirth was not one of the top openings in July. It might have been had it opened on Friday, but these are the 10 highest openings. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I think the potential for Superman to join this list is there if the reviews pan out and if audience enthusiasm is at a high. Of course, we set the record last year with Deadpool and Wolverine, which opened to $211.4 million, followed by The Lion King back in 2019, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, Barbie, The Dark Knight Rises, The Dark Knight, Thor Love and Thunder, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, Spider-Man Homecoming, and Minions. And if you look at this list, July has been very kind to Warner Brothers, to Disney, and to superhero movies, which is why I think it's interesting that we have a Warner Brothers superhero movie and a Disney/Marvel superhero movie opening this month. We'll see if either of them can open wide enough to crack this top 10 and perhaps, just maybe, knock the Minions off that chart. And that leads us to this week's Charts with Dan trivia question. Superman is an easy cinch to be number 1 at the box office this upcoming weekend, but Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, is the only Superman film not to open number 1 in wide release. And so my question is, what 3 movies did it open behind back in that ill-fated for Superman weekend of 1987? I'll give you a couple minutes to think. And the 3 movies that Superman 4 opened behind were RoboCop in its second weekend, a 50th anniversary re-release of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, also in its second weekend, and the Mark Harmon comedy Summer School, directed by Carl Reiner. I don't know if it actually co-stars a dog wearing sunglasses, but I'd like to find out. So Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, definitely the low point of the franchise, no matter what happens with Superman this upcoming weekend. I just wanted to update you as well on a few other movies that are in the top 10. First of all, How to Train Your Dragon has now officially become the highest grossing film in the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. It is now ahead of 2010's animated original, as well as How to Train Your Dragon 2 and How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. When you adjust for inflation, though, this year's How to Train Your Dragon is only at number 3. It's about $16 million behind How to Train Your Dragon 2. I think it's very possible for it to get there, but I don't see another $97-ish million in its future. So I think it's probably bound to be number 2 on the inflation-adjusted list behind the original, and I know a lot of fans of the original animated film will be just fine with that result. I also wanted to note that with their 7th week in the top 10, Lilo & Stitch and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning join One of Them Days to tie for the basically third longest run in the top 10 for movies released in 2025. Sinners still holds the record at 9 weeks. Then a Minecraft movie, Dog Man, and Captain America: Brave New World are all tied with 8 weeks. And then we have One of Them Days, Lilo & Stitch, and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning at 7 weeks. If one or both of them can stay in the top 10 this upcoming weekend, then they will move into a joint second place. And speaking of Lilo & Stitch and Minecraft, the race to be the number 1 movie domestically so far this year is still very tight. This is how the two movies compare through 45 days, and you can see that the margin between the two films is razor thin. I thought that if Lilo & Stitch had a big boost over the July 4th holiday that it might be able to take the lead, but barring something strange happening, it looks like Minecraft will just be able to eke out a win. We'll see when Lilo & Stitch gets pulled out of theaters. However, Minecraft has been able to maintain that narrow lead for a couple of weeks now. Let's turn our attention now to the top 5 films internationally. That's all markets outside of the United States and Canada. And Jurassic World Rebirth was number 1 with $171 million in all other countries. F1 the movie comes in second place with another $56.3 million. How to Train Your Dragon comes in third at $20.9 million. Detective Conan: One-Eyed Flashback continues to have a very successful release in China. And somebody tried to correct me and say, well, that movie's from Japan, not China. Yes, I know. I covered the run in Japan earlier this year, but anime has really been experiencing an uptick in China, and so the grosses we're now seeing from Detective Conan: One-Eyed Flashback are from the Chinese release. And then rounding out the top 5 is Lilo & Stitch with another $9.9 million. When you take those domestic numbers, you combine them with our international numbers, we get the top 5 films worldwide, and Jurassic World Rebirth was at number 1 at $262.5 million with a $318 million running total since it opened on Wednesday. F1 the movie brought in another $82.3 million worldwide. It's approaching $300 million. It's now the highest grossing Apple original film, which, to be fair, isn't really that difficult to do. How to Train Your Dragon dropped 38.6%, brought in another $31.9 million, and is now over the $500 million mark worldwide. Lilo & Stitch brought in another $13.7 million. It has now bypassed a Minecraft movie worldwide. It's the highest grossing Hollywood film of the year, and it is getting closer and closer to that $1 billion mark. And Elio brought in another $12.4 million. It's just shy of the $100 million mark worldwide, but again, no signs of an Elemental-like comeback. Jurassic World's 3-day worldwide opening weekend was the 4th best of the year so far, behind Ne Zha 2, which was also a Wednesday opener, and behind Lilo & Stitch and a Minecraft movie. Those films both broke the $300 million barrier in just 3 days. How to Train Your Dragon is in 5th, followed by Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, Captain America: Brave New World, Thunderbolts, F1 the movie, and Detective Chinatown 1900. That was also a Wednesday opener. We've got so much more to get to this week, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsor for this week's show. This episode is brought to you by the new game, The Cast List. I mentioned The Cast List when it came out, and I'm so happy to have them on board as an official partner of the show. The Cast List is a fast-paced movie trivia game that anyone can play, and if you know me, you know that I love movie trivia. Plus, it was created by my old Schmodown partner, Ben Bateman, so we're keeping it in the family. When you and your friends or family sit down to play the cast list, each person gets a set of cards with an actor on it and some of their movies also listed. The goal is to get your team to guess the actor by by naming the fewest amount of movies. So the more movies you have to name, the smaller your point total is. And you only have 30 seconds, so time is of the essence. There are actors on these cards from the 1950s to today, so it doesn't matter if you're a classic movie fan or if you're more into the newer stuff. And with over 200 actors in the game, you can play again and again. The cast list also has regular mode, lightning mode, where you play as fast as possible, and challenge mode, where you get to give out just one movie per card, so you can play with any group from casual fans to hardcore cinephiles. The cast list is available right now online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, so pick up your game today and start playing. Let's turn our attention now to what I like to call our specialty charts, and we'll start with the top per theater averages for this past weekend, at least so far. A lot of the smaller releases are slower to report, so there may be some movies that belong in this chart that I don't have numbers for. But according to the available data, Jurassic World Rebirth had the best per theater average of the weekend, bringing in $21,240 per theater in over 4,300 theaters. It did not have any IMAX screens, but it certainly was saturated in every other kind of screen. Sorry Baby comes in second place with $9,708 per theater in 14 theaters. It is expanding slowly. F1 the movie brought in just under $7,000 per theater in over 3,700 theaters. Sardar G3 brought in $5,700 in 125 theaters. And the Argentinian film Kill the Jockey, which was the country's submission for the Best International Film Oscar last year, brought in just over $4,600 in one theater. These were the top 5 films in limited release, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer. Sardar G3 brought in $750,000 in its second weekend of release, followed by the Danielle Deadwyler thriller 40 Acres, which opened in 340 theaters and brought in $475,000. Metro Indino or Indino, I'm not sure which one it is, although there were a lot of other things in dinos this past weekend, brought in $355,000 in an unknown number of theaters. Sorry Baby brought in $135,000, and according to available data, Familiar Touch comes in 5th place with just over $15,000 in 21 theaters. There was a lot of motion in the 2025 domestic summer box office chart this past weekend. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning moves up to number 3 for the summer, putting it ahead of Thunderbolts. Jurassic World Rebirth enters the chart at number 5, which drops Final Destination Bloodlines and F1 the movie down to numbers 6 and 7. 28 years later moves up 1 spot, and all of the other motion means that Ballerina moves down 2 spots to number 9, and Elio still manages to hang on at number 10. It keeps just passing movies to stay on this chart. It's about to do the same thing with Ballerina, but I think the writing's on the wall with Elio, and it will be off of this chart in the coming weeks. Karate Kid Legends is now out of the summer box office top 10, and when you look at my predictions versus the actual top 10 so far, as of right now, my number 1 and number 2 prediction are correct with Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. My number 3 pick was Superman, that opens this upcoming weekend, and my number 4 pick was The Fantastic Four, which opens later this month. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, I picked at number 5. It's currently at number 3. I picked Jurassic World Rebirth at number 6. It's already at number 5. We covered that pretty extensively. F1 the movie was my prediction for the number 7 movie at the summer box office. That's where it's sitting right now. We'll see where it settles in. Thunderbolts was my pick at number 8. It is starting to drop down the chart. I picked Elio number 9. I think that it is going to eventually be off the chart, so I think I'm guaranteed to lose one of my top 10. And then my final pick, The Bad Guys 2, doesn't hit theaters until early August. There was also a lot of movement on the 2025 annual domestic box office, so this is all movies released in 2025. A Minecraft movie remains number 1, followed by Lilo and Stitch and Sinners. How to Train Your Dragon moves up 1 spot to number 4. It's about $50 million behind Sinners at the moment. Captain America: Brave New World drops down to number 5. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning moves up 1 spot to number 6. Thunderbolts drops down 1 spot to number 7. Jurassic World Rebirth is currently at number 8 on the chart, but it will be moving up quickly. Final Destination Bloodlines moves down to number 9. F1 the movie is now at number 10. And for the first time this year, all 10 movies in the domestic top 10 for the year have made over $100 million. And we lose 2 films from the early part of the year, Dogman and Snow White. And these are the top 10 movies worldwide for 2025. Nudja 2, of course, remains an easy number one at $2.2 billion, but Lilo and Stitch has now moved past a Minecraft movie worldwide at 972.7 to a Minecraft movie's 954.9 million. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning for right now stays at number 4. How to Train Your Dragon moves up to number 5, which drops Detective Chinatown 1900 down one spot to number 6. Captain America: Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Sinners stay put at number 7, 8, and 9. And Jurassic World Rebirth enters the chart at number 10, which knocks Final Destination Bloodlines off the chart altogether. We'll see if F1 the movie can overtake Sinners, or if Superman will do it first to become the next movie to enter the 2025 worldwide top 10. So that's everything that's going on in the world of the box office. But before we go, I wanted to take a look at the world of streaming and its own blockbuster numbers. And that's thanks to the first few days of Squid Game Season 3, or Squid Game 3. The first viewership numbers are in, and through its first 3 days, Squid Game 3 brought in a total of 60 million views on Netflix, which is one of the best weekly totals that they've ever seen. And again, that's just for its first 3 days. New numbers will come out tomorrow. We'll see how it does in its first full week. At number 2 was K-pop Demon Hunters, which picked up steam in its second week. In my recently published top 10 movies of the year so far, I included K-pop Demon Hunters. It brought in 24.1 million views. Then we have Trainwreck Poop Cruise. I mean, it's all right there in the title. It brought in 21 million views, followed by Season 1 of The Waterfront and Tyler Perry's film Straw. At number 6 was Olimpo Season 1, which is a series from Spain about aspiring professional athletes. It brought in 6.93 million views. Then we have Raid 2, not The Raid 2, but Raid 2, which brought in 5.65 million views, followed by the Robert De Niro and Hathaway movie The Intern at 5.56 million views, Land of Bad returning to the chart at number 9, and 28 Weeks Later, which is available in some regions on Netflix, which brought in 4.92 million views. And when we look at the numbers for Squid Game 3, it had the best week of any Netflix series so far this year with 60 million views. That beats the 58.12 million views that Squid Game 2 got in its second week of release, which kicked off the year. Adolescence comes in third place with 42 million views in its second week, followed by American Murder, Gabby Petito, and the third week of Adolescence, which brought in 30.45 million views. And Squid Game Season 3 actually had the most views of any program on Netflix in its first week, beating Squid Game Season 2, the second week of Tyler Perry's Straw, which brought in 48.89 million views, and then the first 2 weeks of Back in Action. And through 3 days of release, Squid Game Season 3 has already become the third most watched show on Netflix in 2025, coming in behind Squid Game Season 2 and Adolescence. That bumps just about everything down a slot except for Ginny and Georgia Season 3. It moves up one spot to number 7. It's now brought in 47.49 million views. And Miss Rachel Season 1, the only non-Netflix original show on the top 10. It's been drifting in and out of the top 10 for the past few weeks. It's now at number 10, and we lose The Four Seasons and American Primeval from the most watched shows of the year. And when we look at the most watched programs on Netflix, that shows, movies, basically anything that you can watch on the service, Squid Game Season 3 is already at number 10, which officially bumps out The Electric State, reportedly the most expensive Netflix original film in history. It is now not among the 10 most watched programs of the year on Netflix. Let's take a look now at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, these differ from the Netflix numbers in that they are domestic numbers only. They're not global. And they also take about a month to get to us because that's when Nielsen decides to send them out. So these are the numbers for June 2nd through the 8th. And we'll start with the most watched movies that week. The Accountant 2 tops the chart at 23 million hours watched following its theatrical run. So it didn't really set things on fire at the box office, but it did drive a lot of people to Amazon Prime Video, which I'm sure they're probably happy about over there. Then we had the debut week of Straw on Netflix, bringing in 14.6 million hours watched. If the pattern continues from the overall Netflix numbers we've already seen, we should see a boost in viewership for Straw when we see next week's Nielsen numbers. Then we have Now You See Me and Now You See Me 2 on Netflix, followed by The Accountant at number 5, Captain America Brave New World at number 6, The Wild Robot at number 7, B-Movie, which we often see on the Netflix charts, at number 8, A Widow's Game, and 2002's Lilo and Stitch, rounding out the top 10 with 3.9 million hours watched. And The Accountant 2 had the third best debut for any movie in the US on streaming this year, behind the 33.2 million hours that Moana 2 brought in when it debuted on Disney Plus, as well as the debut of Back in Action on Netflix at 25.5 million hours. And The Accountant 2 had the fourth best week overall for any movie streamed domestically, according to Nielsen, behind the opening week of Moana 2, as well as the opening of Back in Action, and basically tied with the second week of Back in Action, and again ahead of the debut of The Electric State. These were the most watched streaming shows for June 2nd through the 8th. At number 1 was Ginny and Georgia, returning to the charts with a massive 48 million hours watched. In second place was Animal Kingdom, which is not a new show. It actually ran on TNT and wrapped up a few years ago, but it hit the Netflix streaming service, and a lot of times we'll see older shows like Animal Kingdom or Suits pop when they finally do hit that streamer. 18.9 million hours watched there. Then we have Department Q, Bluey, The Better Sister, Love Island USA with 12.8 million hours watched, Grey's Anatomy, SpongeBob SquarePants, NCIS, and Family Guy. And when we look at overall streaming performances in the US for the year so far, Ginny and Georgia comes in fourth place with 48 million hours watched. Remember, Nielsen does not delineate between seasons, so this is watch time for all seasons. That comes in behind 2 weeks of viewing for The Night Agent, right around the release of The Night Agent 2 back in January, as well as the first week of Squid Game 2's release at 76.5 million hours watched. Ginny and Georgia comes in just ahead of the viewership numbers for The Residents, which hit back in March and was actually recently canceled. When we look at the top shows on Nielsen by watch time per available episode, so basically we take all the hours of watch time and divide them by the number of episodes that were available to watch, Sirens still tops the chart at 2.4 million hours watched per episode, followed by Department Q with just over 2 million hours per episode. The Better Sister comes in third, followed by Ginny and Georgia at 1.6 million hours per episode. Mobland comes in fifth place, followed by Tires, Animal Kingdom, Stranger Things, The Handmaid's Tale, and You, rounding out the top 10. And when we look at the most watched original streaming series of the year through June 8th, Reacher is still number 1, although Squid Game, once we get the newest numbers, will easily take that number 1 spot back. The Night Agent is in third, followed by Severance. You moves up to number 5, and The Handmaid's Tale, which wrapped up its entire series earlier this year, moves up to number 6. The Residents 1923, Love is Blind, and Landman all move down the chart. And that's all I've got for you this week, but before I let you go, I just wanted to point out a few things you might be interested in watching either in theaters or at home this upcoming week. First of all, tomorrow on Tuesday, Karate Kid Legends will be available for digital sale as well as premium video on demand. Those are those higher price rentals. So if you didn't see it in theaters, tomorrow will be your first chance to watch it at home. On Wednesday, the 17th season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia will premiere on FXX with a 2-episode season premiere. Then on Thursday, a new horror film called Skill House will hit theaters via Fathom Events. Skill House is from Josh Stolberg, who's been a writer on the last few Saw movies, and it stars some real influencers as fake influencers who are put in a house together to kill each other. Also debuting on Netflix this Thursday is Too Much, the latest series from Lena Dunham about a woman who relocates to London to start her life over. And debuting on Thursday on Nat Geo is the documentary Jaws at 50, the definitive inside story. And one look around the set makes it pretty obvious that I'm a Jaws fan, and I guess that word got over to somebody at Disney because I don't get a lot of things in the mail, a lot of the promotional stuff, but they asked if I wanted a box to tie into the release of Jaws at 50, and I said, yeah, sure. So they sent over some really cool stuff, a speaker so I can, listen to my music, a 50th anniversary edition of the original book by Peter Benchley. I like this a lot, this Amity 1975 t-shirt, which I think is pretty awesome. There was also a Nat Geo beach towel in there. It's pretty much the perfect kit for a Jaws fan like myself to go to the beach and not get in the water. So I want to thank the very kind people over at Disney who sent that box over just because they heard I was a Jaws fan. And yes, Jaws at 50, the definitive inside story, debuts on Thursday on Nat Geo and will be available to stream next day on Disney Plus and Hulu. On Friday, it's one of the most anticipated movies of the summer, and a lot rides on this if you're James Gunn or the executives at Warner Brothers. Superman will be hitting theaters. My plan is to hit the road today and see the movie and get my review to you on Tuesday when the review embargo is lifted. Also hitting theaters in limited release on Friday and available same day for digital purchase and rental is a movie called Sovereign, which stars Nick Offerman and Jacob Tremblay. And it's a movie that I really, really enjoyed. I actually got the chance to see the film and interview the director of the movie. There's a lot that's very interesting to talk about as far as what this movie's about and the themes in the film, the performances. And you can check out that interview later this week. I'm planning to do probably a beta test, one of the earlier versions of the weekly live show. I'm still working out a few kinks, but I think that this week is a great opportunity to do that. So stay tuned right here on the channel later this week. I'm going to do one of my live shows, and inside of that live show, you'll also be able to see my interview with the director of Sovereign. Also premiering on Friday on Paramount Plus is Dexter Resurrection. It's a 2-episode premiere. This is the second Dexter sequel series starring Michael C. Hall. This is not Dexter New Blood, and it's also not the prequel series. They just keep trying to keep Dexter alive. I feel like they're trying to reach a peak that happened so many years ago. You just can't recreate that magic, but man, are they trying. Premiering Friday on Netflix, Tyler Perry already has a hit film in Straw. Well, he's got another one hitting called Medea's Destination Wedding. Probably a bit of a different tone than Straw. If you're more of an Apple TV Plus kind of person, Foundation Season 3 debuts Friday on Apple TV Plus. And if you have Peacock, Drop, which was a Blumhouse release from earlier this year, will be premiering for you to watch at home on that streaming service. And that's everything I've got for you this week. I will be back here very soon tomorrow with my review of Superman, which I am so curious about. And of course, as I mentioned, a live show later in the week. I'll probably do a spoiler review for Superman once we hit the weekend. So a busy week ahead. If you haven't subscribed or hit that notification bell, be sure to do that so you know when I upload a new video. But most of all, thank you for joining me for this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.